Welcome back. All right, so some news of the day for all you fine people on the internet for your Monday, May the 1st. And May the 1st be with you. No, it's May the 4th. I don't think I'm doing a Star Wars video this year. Anyways, so Boston news is going to be coming out. Kevin Weeks is reporting what we'd all kind of knew throughout these playoffs, that Ullmark played through an injury which limited his movement and technique. And so to me, it looked like groin issue, MCL, ACL, something in that area, something that just would limit his ability to move from post to post. And Florida had it figured out. The last game he played, Florida had it figured out that he wasn't 100%. You could see in those goals going in, they had a book on him. So I did think that Game 6 probably would have been the best place to put Swayman in, but it is really easy to be that Monday morning quarterback. And so I'm not doing that, not crying in my cornflakes either. The reality is, Boston being out of the playoffs is kind of a rite of passage for me as a Bruins fan. I have dealt with this since, I want to say since 92 or 93, I've worn a Bruins jersey the day after they get eliminated from the playoffs. And the only year they didn't was 2011 when they knocked out Vancouver. So that's that. For Boston, there's a lot of head scratching and a lot of finger pointing that's going to be going on. One thing that hasn't been cleared up yet is, was it Bergeron's last game? I'm thinking it was. Will it prove to be Krejci's last game? It may very well end up being Krejci's last game as well. There are cap overages that end up, so they reached their goals this year to get their bonuses, and so those bonuses get tacked on to next year. Boston's cap situation is not great next year. So basically, they were all in for this year, and they laid it all on the line during the regular season, and whether they just didn't have the energy left for the playoffs, or maybe they weren't able to raise their level in the playoffs when Florida did. Either way, they're out, and I will be doing videos on teams that lost in the playoffs. Now that the teams that have missed the playoffs, that playlist is done, and Boston may very well be the first team to take a look at, because there's a lot to discuss there, right? So, anyways, that's something to keep an eye on. See what other injuries players were playing through. They were not 100%. No excuse, though. Florida, absolutely legit, won that round. Now, bidding for the Ottawa Senators has taken a bit of a turn. We all expected the Remington Group and Ryan Reynolds, which are in the $1 billion range for their bid right now, they were the favorites. But does that change if Snoop Dogg decides to add his name to one of the other ownership bids? He has joined the Nico Sparks bid for the Sens. And Snoop has been an NHL fan for a very, very long time. That is one collaboration video I think I would really enjoy, would be Snoop Dogg and yours truly. It won't happen. I don't think Snoop Dogg knows who the heck I am. That dude with the whiteboard, I don't know who he is. Anyways, that's how I picture that going. But yeah, Snoop joining the bid for the Sens, that could up that bid and put that into the forefront. Also, he has said that he would go to some Sens home games if, in fact, that bid won. I think that would be great for the NHL, too. So here's two different bids. You get Ryan Reynolds, you got Snoop Dogg, completely different audiences, but it would definitely increase the visibility of the league. And regardless of which of those two, if it comes down to those two bids, regardless of which one wins, I think the NHL wins either way. So all the best of luck to Snoop. The guy likes wearing jerseys. He absolutely does. He's been wearing jerseys for many, many, many years. He was one of the first, I remember, wearing a jersey amongst celebrities. I'm pretty sure he was the first rapper that I saw wearing a jersey. Although I think back and I'm like, okay, how many of those other ones counted? And did I see a Bruins jersey at some point? Anyways, yeah. So Snoop, all the best to him, and yeah, it's too bad that him and Ryan Reynolds couldn't be part of the same bid. That'd kind of be perfect. All right. So this has been a talking point. This isn't the first time we've seen this, but this seems very specific. So the Florida Panthers, in basically deciding on how they're going to sell their tickets for the next round, they have limited the ticket price or ticket purchases to just U.S. residents. So you have to have a U.S. based credit card and address attached to that credit card in order to buy from them. And that's not entirely unheard of. There are times where I try to buy things via the States and I get back, your card's been rejected because you're in Canada, kind of thing. But this is odd. So, in the case of the Vegas Golden Knights with the Edmonton Oilers, there's no restriction on Canadians buying tickets for the Vegas games, but there are restrictions on the Florida games. Now, one thing for Florida is that it may very well be they don't want their arena to be all Leaf fans. That's probably what this is. Now, Leaf fans are still going to use the secondary market to get tickets. They're just going to pay a lot more. I don't think it's going to limit the Leaf fan presence that much. I don't know what the numbers are going to be, but there will still be Leaf fans in attendance. But that it feels like that's what it is. That they just don't want the building to be filled with Leaf fans that'll take the whole thing over. I disagree with limiting ticket prices or ticket purchases, I should say, not prices. Although, yes, limiting prices would be nice too if there was some kind of a, hey, we'll only raise the price by this percentage this year. But anyway, that's a whole other discussion. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that policy changes. I'm not thinking it will. And so, Florida looking for that home ice advantage when they get games 3 and 4. I'm thinking that there will be some Leaf fans who, seeing this hurdle, will be more determined to get in there and shout and scream and cheer for the Leafs as loudly as possible while they're there. So it's one thing to keep an eye on with this series. Calgary news. So in addition to Daryl Sutter getting the boot this morning, which I already reported on, Oliver Shillington is set to return to the team this fall. He missed the entire season due to a family issue, personal reasons, and he's looking forward to being back. I haven't seen exactly what those family reasons were or that personal issue was, but apparently it's either resolved or resolved enough that he can come back. So that's good news. I think they missed Shillington on the blue line. I think that's one underrated part of how things went wrong in Calgary was that a guy like Shillington wasn't available. The team also saying that they felt that there was a new voice needed behind the bench, so that's why they made the move with Daryl Sutter, which, again, I wasn't really surprised by. I'm just surprised it took this long after the playoffs were done for that move to happen. Normally, it's right after the playoffs are done. So, with Sutter being out, team needing a new voice, we'll see who that new voice ends up being. But I'm thinking it probably won't be an old school, hardline kind of coach. Probably somebody who's a little more relaxed, more of a player's coach. Marc-Andre Fleury. So with Minnesota falling out of the playoffs in the first round, again, Fleury has stated his intent to stay with the Minnesota Wild next year. No intention of going anywhere. And so we'll see. Because really for Bill Guerin, he is under the gun when it comes to the salary cap. And if he can make moves to alleviate that, I think he will. And so we'll see whether Fleury sticks around and somebody else goes or what happens. But and I know there's a no trade, basically part of that contract as well. I think there's a modified no trade with that one. But at any rate, for Fleury, he intends to stick around. Doesn't want to go anywhere. Matt Dumba also wants to re-sign. Made it very clear that his heart is in Minnesota, or Mini, as he said. And despite a fan saying, nobody who lives here calls it Mini. I've seen plenty of people from Minnesota refer to it as Mini. It's the same argument we had years ago about Vegas. So we say Vegas, and it's Las Vegas. Nobody calls it Vegas. Everybody calls it Vegas. But yeah, so for Minnesota, if they want to keep Dumba, he's going to have to take less money if he wants to stick around. Because I don't think they have the cap space to offer him the kind of money he was making during his last contract. And if he goes to market, he may very well get that cap hit. He may very well get a $6 million a year contract because he's young. He's seen as a good two-way defenseman. He'll probably get some good money. So we'll see what happens there. One thing I wanted to mention with Colorado. So I've mentioned it in the news video because it just seems very salacious at this time and uneven and unfinished. So the Valeri Nichushkin situation, where he's with the team and then he's not, and apparently there was an intoxicated woman in his hotel room, had to be taken to the hospital, and there's a police report. There really hasn't been any information from the Avs. Nothing from Nichushkin. He's gone silent. But he didn't play in games 6 and 7. So you're in a situation where he didn't play in do-or-die games for Colorado. So it has to be something major. The Avs never officially suspended him. The league never made a statement on it. And from what I can tell, there's been no charges of any sort. So I mean, there's other salacious parts of this too, that he's married. And so if there's a woman in your hotel room and you're married, I mean, and again, this is something that I don't think is completely outside of the realm of possibility with other NHLers. I have certainly heard my share of stories about National Hockey League players, married Hockey League players, and so I have no idea what's going on with Nichushkin, and I don't know what this does to his future with the team, because it has to be something that the team will look at and say, all right, so what next, right? If this is a disciplinary issue after the fact, I don't know how that's going to look, or if he's just going to be back with the team and nobody will say anything. So maybe they're just waiting for it to blow over. But that's why I didn't really report on it, because there really wasn't anything there. What's weird is the team's out and there still hasn't been anything to clarify what happened other than what I already said, which is kind of vague. And it is vague, and it's frustrating on that level, because it feels like there could be a lot there, or there might be nothing there. Might be no big deal. But if it's no big deal, he would have played in games 6 and 7. So your guess is as good as mine on that one. So signing news from today, and there's a lot of signings going on, a lot of draft picks getting signed, a lot of prospects getting signed. Teams trying to get their 50 contracts for next season figured out, because you have 50 contracts you're allowed to have at one time. So Hudson Fasching signs a 2-year extension with the New York Islanders. It is worth league minimum. It's a one-way contract, meaning if he goes to the AHL, he still gets paid the NHL money. $775,000 per season. That is now the league minimum next year. So the league minimum going up by $25,000. I mean, it's a minor thing, but think of how close everybody was to the salary cap this year. It might mean a little bit less money here and there, and a little bit more trying to juggle your roster this coming season. We'll see. I also wanted to share in this one, I've talked about the Bo Horvat situation with the Islanders, and a lot of conversation about how he wasn't producing. Bruce Boudreau, interviewed by, I think it was by Donnie and Dolly, talking about the production issues for Horvat, and basically saying that their power play wasn't as good as Vancouver's. Correct. That is a big part of it. And that he relied on a lot of tip shots. Agreed. One thing I noticed with Horvat in the games for the Islanders was they weren't putting him at the net. A lot of the goals, if you look at those goals that he had in Vancouver, a lot of them are in close and a lot of them are tip shots. And people at the time said, he can't maintain this. He can't maintain the shooting percentage. It's ridiculous. He can't. But he could. He could have maintained that shooting percentage, but he had to keep being deployed in that manner. And for the Islanders, well, they already had guys in front of the net tipping pucks. They used him for face-offs. They used him for his defensive play. I thought he played well. I did. I thought he played well in that first-round setting, but he's not being deployed in a way where he's going to score a lot of goals. So whether that's on Lane Lambert or whether it's on Lou Lamoriello for bringing in a guy who may have been redundant on some level, where the role that he was fulfilling in Vancouver, there was already somebody fulfilling that role with the Islanders. I don't put it on Horvat. I really put it on just the makeup of the team, and the fact that, you know, he was making a lot of great plays and a lot of tip goals in Vancouver via power play and via just a really good cycle game, which with the Islanders, they play a completely different style. It may very well mean that Horvat going forward, maybe he's only a 20 goal scorer, maybe he gets 40 points a year, and it's a very expensive contract for that. Because again, you know, how many times have we seen a player change teams and say all the right things, but it just doesn't necessarily work. So I will also agree with Bruce that having a full season starting with training camp in September with the Islanders will help Horvat too, and maybe over the summer, Lou Lamoriello or whoever's in charge, maybe they make a change of who's in charge with the Islanders, bring in players that can get the most out of Horvat, right? Or maybe change systems to get the most out of him. But I don't really put it on Horvat. It wasn't a lack of effort. It just, they weren't deploying him the same. If he'd stayed in Vancouver, I think he would have reached 40, 45 goals. But in New York, he is not going to get those kinds of goals. But let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.